Hi folks, welcome to the channel. I'm Chris, your host, and if this is your first time here, welcome. If you've been here with previous episodes, then welcome back. In previous episodes, we have discussed things such as investing, how investing and saving your money can bring about certain types of freedom in your life, freedom with your family, the ability to travel, things of those nature, all benefits of having the ability to save and invest as you go along. Today we're going to continue that discussion a little bit, and we're going to talk about retirement. And you're thinking, retirement? Why do I need to think about retirement? I'm not planning on retiring anytime soon, so why the discussion on retirement? Well, if you're in your 60s like I am, or maybe older than that, I realized at my age that the time that I should have been planning on my retirement was 40 or 50 years ago. Yes, even in your teens, you should begin thinking about planning your retirement. Now, I'm not saying, I'm going to retire when I'm 60 or 62 and I'm going to be a millionaire and things of that nature. And of course, those are great aspirations and wonderful goals. But what I'm talking about is planning on retirement from the aspect of how do I get from here, point A, as let's say an 18 or 20-year-old, until the time that you're ready to actually retire. Maybe that's in your 60s or maybe even later, or it could be older. I mean, let's be honest, a lot of people do retire in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. But did they do some planning? Oh, I'm sure they did. Have you done your planning yet? Well, that's a question that you are the only one that can answer that for yourself, okay? So let's talk about that today for a few minutes, okay? First, let's look at the history of retirement because, retirement hasn't always been a thing. Today, retirement's a thing, right? I mean, there are people that, they got YouTube channels built specifically to show you how to retire when you're 25 or 29 years old or 30 or whatever. There's books written by the hundreds every day of people that say, hey, I can help you get to the $1 million level in 6 months or 12 months or whatever, or retire by the time you're 40 and travel the world and never worry about money again. And you can do that if you have the right type of vocation, if you have the right type of investments, but you don't just throw a dice on the ground and go, I got it 7, so I'm going to go do this, right? It's not a crap table. But if you put a little time, a little planning, and a little effort into it, you can be miles ahead of where you would have been otherwise, okay? So 100 years ago, let's say, and it's 2024 now, so in 1924, people didn't live as long then as they do now. There were outliers. There were people that lived to be in their 80s or 90s or early 100 years old, much like they do today. But the average person back then, they didn't take care of themselves as well as at least the way we think that we do today. We like to think that in 2024 we eat better. We take care of ourselves physically and better through exercise and better food choices and things of that nature. We don't smoke and drink, or we don't smoke and drink as much as they did 100 years ago, right? 100 years ago, people, they ate whatever, they smoked whatever, they drank as much as they could possibly get in their glass. And we just don't live that way any longer, okay? So naturally, the age at which most people pass away today is a bit different than it was 100 years ago. Now, that being said, because of that, 100 years ago, even 50 years ago, a lot of people didn't plan for retirement because of that. They figured that they were going to probably work until they died. And a lot of people did. A lot of men, particularly, because that was kind of the age when women didn't work outside the home as much, though they did work outside the home. But it was generally a male-dominated society from a work aspect. And the men worked 8, 10, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week maybe. And they worked hard. They worked very hard to bring home a paycheck for the family, to put food on the table and things of that nature. They literally worked themselves into a grave in a lot of ways, in some ways very literally in that respect. Now, as time has progressed in that past 100 years, people don't work like that. They have different, work at home, occupations. They have different types of work that they do. You don't see as much physical labor as you did 100 years ago, or 50 years ago for that matter. You see a lot more office and corporate type of jobs that are being worked by people in general. And because of that, that also has a somewhat of a contributing factor to longevity and age. Okay, so that's kind of where we are from that aspect today. Now, when you think about retirement, what does that really mean to you? I mean, what is it? What pops up in your mind when you start thinking about retirement? Well, laying on the beach, drinking Mai Tais and watching the waves come in. That's pretty much what everybody thinks about. Well, a lot of people, not everybody. Some people would prefer to go hiking in the mountains somewhere in the world. But a lot of people think that just laying on the beach and drinking another Mai Tai or gin and tonic or whatever, that's probably what they think of retirement. But that's not really what it's about. Retirement is a lot to do with how you look at your life after you leave your job, okay? Because at some point you're going to leave your job. You're going to leave it either because you've become an age where you're not as competitive in your occupation, or perhaps health reasons have made you retire, okay? Health reasons from, let's say, a heart issue or issues with being able to move about as limberly, I guess you could say, as you did when you were 30 or 40 years old. And so it's hard to keep up with younger people in your occupation when you have certain types of health issues, okay? But now, because we've talked about how people live longer, in many instances they can also work longer, and that kind of goes back to the type of job that you do. So at some point you're going to say, well, I'm ready to retire. But do you do that because you want to retire, or is it age related? And again, we've just talked about that. But it also means that you have to look at it from the aspect of, if I can continue to do my job, do I want to retire as late as possible? In other words, work as long as possible and get that extra money, that extra cushion of savings in my account before I actually retire? Or do I have enough money in my account now that I think that I'm comfortable throughout the rest of my life? So is it a decision that you're making because you want to or because you have to? Okay, those are aspects that can be really hard to come to a decision on, because in some instances those decisions are made for you and you don't have a choice. There are employers who will say, your services are no longer wanted or no longer needed, or you're not as competitive. And so we're going with a younger person and you're going to have to retire, okay? Looking at some of my notes here, let's talk about the benefits of retirement, okay? If you decide to retire, or even if you reach an age where you are forced into retirement, right? Let's think about the positives of that. Well, you certainly can sleep as long as you want in the mornings now, right? You have the ability to travel, to see family, to see interesting sights that you've wanted to see all your life, okay? You can hop on a train or a plane or get in your automobile and you can drive wherever, or you can fly across the ocean and see whatever you want to see, the Eiffel Tower in Paris as an example, okay? You have more personal time and more personal freedom as well. When you think about it, you literally are in charge of yourself, right? At that point, no one is telling you you have to be at work at 8 o'clock in the morning and you have to stay until 5. You can go to lunch at 10 o'clock in the morning, or you can go to a movie at 1:30 in the afternoon and see a matinee. Who would think, right? But at that point, if you've reached the age of retirement and you have taken that leap, you are in charge of yourself. So definitely some benefits in that. Now let's talk about some of the cons, if you want to call them that, of being retired, and whether that's retire early or otherwise. You can lose a lot of self-esteem, and I'm not saying you personally as you watching this video, but I'm talking about human beings in general. A lot of people will identify with their job. A lot of people in law enforcement, in the government, in the military, shoot, even people that work in corporate America, they take on the personality of their job and they kind of become their job. So when they no longer have that job, then they no longer have that persona, and consequently they can lose their self-esteem. They have lost their direction, so to speak, okay? So, and that can be very detrimental to people from a mental health standpoint. So it kind of goes back to that health aspect that we talked about a moment ago, okay? Also, your health. Again, we mentioned that by losing your self-esteem as an example, it can have a mental health consequence for you as a person, okay? Additionally, it could be an aspect that money becomes a problem, and it's a con because if you've lost your job or you're retired on purpose, and I say on purpose just because you said, hey, I've got enough money, I'm done. It is not uncommon for people that do that and do that earlier in life to find out 5 or 10 or 20 years down the road that, well, there's been a little bit of purchase creep, shall we say. And 20 years down the road, they don't have quite as much money as they thought or anticipated to have at that point. Maybe they've taken a few too many first-class business flights around the world to see the things that they wanted instead of flying economy, as an example. Or maybe they bought too many brand new cars over that time frame and they've now, let's say squandered some of that hard-earned savings that they've put aside in the years past. Okay, and then as we transition a little bit from why we retire, let's talk about planning for the retirements, because we did mention that earlier, that planning is a huge aspect of being able to retire. And by that I mean not just retire and be done with it, I mean retire and retire comfortably. Again, let's go back to the thoughts that by being able to retire at an age where you can still physically and from a health aspect be able to travel, to spend time with friends and family, regardless of whether they are local or whether you have to drive somewhere or fly in an airplane to get to go and visit with them. Those are things that, you know, can certainly, you know, have an impact on you personally. But let's talk about saving and investing, okay? First off, there is a concept or perhaps a belief that you can never have enough money saved up. And then there's the flip side of the coin, which is, yeah, there's definitely a point at some time or at some amount that you've saved too much. Okay. Now, whether you personally think that you can save too much or you cannot save enough, again, that's your personal opinion. Okay. I am not a financial planner, so I'm not going to say you can certainly retire for the rest of your life with $1 million in the bank and you're golden. You're good to go. That's a personal thing, and that's something that, as an individual, you're the only one that can make that determination. And even then, as time progresses, you may discover that you had more than enough. And on the flip side of that, you could find out that you're nowhere close and that you should have probably worked a few more years based on your spending habits, okay? But there are a lot of investment tools that you can use. Again, in previous episodes, we've talked about ETFs, exchange traded funds, mutual funds, bond funds, regular high yield savings accounts, certificates of deposit. There are just a plethora, is a great word. There is a plethora of types of investment tools that you can use. And we're not here to talk about each one of those individually, but let it be known that there are a lot of things that you can choose. And again, since I'm not your financial planner, and this is not investment advice, you have to do some research on your own. You can't just pick up a book off the bookshelf at your local library or bookstore, thumb through 10 or 20 pages and figure out you've got the right answers. A lot of those people that write those books are very smart. But again, they don't know you personally, and they speak and they write in generalities in many aspects. So it's something that you definitely have to do your own research on, okay? But those types of investments can lead you to a life of comfort later on down the road in retirement. But again, you have to think about those things and you have to plan for those things early in life. If you're 25 or 29 years old, it's not too late. It's never too late to start planning for retirement and saving and investing for your future. But the later you wait or the longer you wait, the less of a chance that you're going to have to build up the amount of savings and investments that can make your life more comfortable, okay? So start earlier. Now let's talk about what I would call the 5 W's of retirement. And I kind of stole this from the Army, okay, or the military, the U.S. military. The 5 W's are the who, the what, the when, the where, and the why. So who, what, and when are easy. Those are the 3 questions that are the easiest. It's who, it's you. What, it's planning for your retirement. And when? Well, let's just say you want to retire in your 60s, okay? You're probably still young enough that you can do pretty much whatever you did 10 or 20 years ago. But depending on your age, again, the sooner rather than later aspect of planning for your retirement, and from the investment standpoint particularly, is important. Where and why? Well, why can be health related, and we talked about that earlier in this video. Why can also be because, well, I think I've got enough money now. And whether that's $200,000, $500,000, $10 million, whatever the case is that you feel comfortable, then that's your personal decision. The where aspect, gosh, where can be really, really tough to answer because, again, do you want to live in the mountains so you can hike a lot and see nature, be around nature? Do you want to live at the beach? Well, Beaches are great, but not for everybody, right? So who, what, when, where, and why. Just take a sheet of paper, put those down, annotate them, and then you can start filling in the blocks, okay? Just kind of put some line items out there that says, this is when I want to retire, why I want to retire, where I want to retire, and when I want to retire. And if you look at those things, it will help you as you start to consider your retirement. And again, when you're 20, you don't know where you want to retire. You don't know when you want to retire. Well, you might know when you want to retire. Earlier is better, right? For everything. But the aspect of being able to afford retirement is just as important when you're 20 as it is when you're 50 or 60 or 70 or even older, okay? Again, let's think about, can you save too much for retirement? Maybe, maybe not. If you think that you need only $500,000 to live the rest of your life and you're 40, go for it. I mean, nobody is going to tell you no. If you think you need $10 million to retire and you're 40 and you got 10 cents to your name, you need to really sit down and come up with a very, very thorough plan and look at those 5 W's. Again, who, what, when, where, and why. And start the aspect of planning that is so important at an earlier age when you're 40 or maybe considered middle age at that point. You have to save more and you have to save more frequently. So it becomes an aspect of where you have to save as much as possible every paycheck, every time that you get paid by your employer, or if you're self-employed, every time you pay yourself, whether that's once a month or once a week or every 2 weeks or whatever. You really have to save even more diligently and even more money at that point to get where you may have been if you had started saving when you were 20 or 22 years old, right out of college, right? So this has been a long video. And it wasn't necessarily meant to go in depth in the entire subject of retirement, because Lord knows there are so many books on the bookshelves at your library, at the bookstore down the street, whole sections of books that are written and have been written year after year after year and sat on the shelf, and people will buy them and people will pick them up and read them, take them home, and they'll digest them. But they lack the ability in most instances to take action on those steps that are laid out in those books. Again, some of these writers are extremely knowledgeable. They're very educated. They have lived the life. They've gotten the experience and the training. They've got the certifications, the degrees. They help people daily in many instances on how to get from wherever they are at financially to where they can be best able to retire and to afford a lifestyle that they are comfortable with, okay? And you can do that too. I can do it, you can do it, we can all do it. But it's you can't just read the book and then think, I'm good, I know everything, and never take action on those things. So even if you read a dozen books, or even if you only read 2 books, and you get some information out of that that is actionable, that you can call a financial planner, or you can go online and you can look at some web page like Vanguard or Schwab, and you can do some research on mutual funds. There is a place that you can start, and those are simple steps to take. They're very actionable. You can do this. You can do this very, very easily. Does it take money? Yeah, it takes money. And sometimes you have to start with just a basic high yield savings account first. Get $1,000 in there or $500, and you can start from there. With Fidelity particularly, they have mutual funds that they charge no fees, and you can open an account for as little as $1, and Schwab does as well. You can do it with both of those two companies. So even if you've got only a small amount of money, you can start. Are you going to get rich overnight? Nope, not going to do that. Are you going to be rich in 10 years? Probably not. But again, it goes back to, what is your definition of rich? What is your definition of well-being? If you go back and look at a previous video of ours, you will recall that we talked about the magic number of $75,000 in yearly income being the optimum amount of income for a employee. 75,000. Can you do that? Yeah, you can do that. You can make that 75,000, and then you can take some of that money and you can put that into that mutual fund or that savings account with Schwab or Fidelity, again, particularly because they have very little amount of money that you need in order to open an account. They have people that will help you do the research and help you find the types of mutual funds or ETFs that can get you to a place where you are investing comfortably and you have the ability to prepare yourself financially for your retirement in the years to come. So those are all things that you can do. You don't have to have a lot of degrees. You don't have to have people that will educate you on every aspect of finance and retirement and how to plan for those things. You can do it on your own. Yeah, you can. I got faith in you. You can do that. So we're going to end the video here. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope that you will like this video and subscribe to the channel. By all means, if you have any comments or questions that you want, put them in the section down below in the comment section. Let's review those in a future episode. I will do my best to respond to any questions that you have, but again, I am not a financial planner. This is not financial advice, but we can all get there together. I promise you that. So until the next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day, morning, afternoon, whichever it is, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye now.